If Tibet is sealed, who left these ancient structures? The answer to that question may lie in the very buildings that still defy explanation, scattered across a region that traditional history has never been able to fully explain. Tibet is not merely a remote plateau surrounded by mountains. It is a territory that remained deliberately isolated for centuries, where extreme geography, altitude of more than 4,000 meters, and hostile climate created an almost impassable barrier to the outside world. But it was precisely in this isolation that some of the most intriguing structures in history were erected. And what makes this truly peculiar is that many of them seem to defy not only the logistics of their construction, but also the very historical narrative about who built them and when. Let us begin with the aspect that few documentaries truly address: the geographic and architectural precision that these structures demonstrate. We are not merely talking about beautiful or spiritually significant buildings. We are talking about constructions that, when analyzed in detail, reveal knowledge of engineering, astronomical orientation, and mastery of materials that seem incompatible with the period in which they supposedly were erected. Many of them were built on vertical slopes, on inaccessible peaks, on terrain that would challenge even modern technology to climb and work on safely. The first structure that defies explanation is the Potala Temple complex in Lhasa. Officially, this is described as a palace built mainly in the 17th century by the 5th Dalai Lama. But when you study the characteristics of the construction, the stone-laying techniques, the internal geometry, and the way the entire structure is integrated into the mountain on which it rests, inconsistencies emerge. The precision of the stone joints, the sophistication of the water drainage systems, the mathematical orientation of its corridors, and the very positioning of the structure in relation to the cardinal points suggest knowledge that goes beyond what a 17th century project could gather, especially considering Tibet's isolation at that time. But there is more. Researchers who had access to parts of the Potala Temple discovered records, many of them only fragmented, pointing to the fact that certain sections were built much earlier than the official chronology allows. Some of the foundations show marks of work and techniques that hark back to much more ancient periods. Worse still, among the monks who guard the temple, there is oral knowledge of chambers and sections that have remained sealed for centuries, to which even Western historians have not had access. What is being preserved in these chambers remains an unanswered question. The second structure we must examine is Tiahuanaco. Well, technically Tiahuanaco is in Bolivia, but the knowledge of its construction, the dissemination of its cultural influence, and even its mysterious links with civilizations of Tibet suggest a connection that conventional history rarely explores adequately. However, on Tibetan territory itself, there are ruins that echo the same sophistication, especially in the Ngari sectors and in the Mount Kailash region. Mount Kailash is the third structure we must consider, although here things become particularly complex. Officially, Mount Kailash is described simply as a sacred mountain for multiple religions. But there is iconographic and geographic evidence that much more is involved. The mountain presents an almost perfect pyramid shape with sides that fall at nearly equal angles. The mathematical probability of a natural geological formation occurring in this way is extremely low. Furthermore, the mountain is positioned at the heart of a region where several major rivers converge, at a point that appears to have been deliberately chosen as the center of some larger structure. And here is the true mystery. Explorers and archaeologists who approached Mount Kailash report structures around it that do not appear on official maps. There are records of platforms, paved paths, stone markers, and even what appears to be astronomical carvings on nearby rocks. But when Western teams attempted to investigate formally, they found access blocked and resistance from local and Tibetan authorities. Why would a sacred mountain be so carefully protected from rigorous archaeological investigation? The fourth structure is the Tholing Monastery, a complex that was erected in the 10th century, but which reveals construction characteristics that suggest much more ancient architectural influences. The monastery is located in a strategic position that dominates the confluence of two major rivers. But what is truly disturbing is that the monastery appears to have been built over pre-existing structures. When archaeologists examined the foundations, they discovered evidence of earlier occupation, with construction residues that date centuries before the official monastery. It appears the monastery was built literally on top of an older structure, purposefully concealing it. The fifth structure is less well known, but equally intriguing. What some scholars call the Lost Observatories of Chiu Gompa. Situated in an elevated position, these ancient buildings exhibit characteristics that indicate very sophisticated astronomical purposes. Traditional Tibetans have oral stories about ancient astronomers who occupied these structures to observe the skies and make complex calculations about planetary movements. But these calculations, when analyzed, show a precision that transcends what should be possible with primitive optical instruments. The sixth and seventh structures can be grouped together as they represent a pattern, the Lost Cities of Shambhala. Now, Shambhala is often treated as legend, a mythological realm that would have no real physical existence. But there is growing evidence that Shambhala may have been a real city or urban complex, and that certain structures in eastern Tibet correspond to ancient descriptions of its locations. Private expeditions found ruins that demonstrate sophisticated urban planning, complex irrigation systems, and architectural dispositions that suggest a level of civilization much more advanced than what the region supposedly possessed during the periods in which these constructions should have been made. Access to these ruins has become progressively more restricted. Ancient maps that showed these cities were confiscated. Researchers who attempted to investigate received pressure from multiple fronts. The question that remains is, why would a modern government care about sealing an archaeological legend? The eighth structure is the Kumbum Shambhala system, a multi-chambered structure carved within a mountain. This place is officially described as a 14th century monastery. But explorers who had partial access report that the interior of Kumbum is much more vast and complex than the exterior suggests. There are chambers that appear to have served purposes that are not clearly religious. There are marks and symbols that do not correspond to any known Tibetan tradition. And there is evidence that certain sectors were deliberately sealed and filled with stone to conceal them. The ninth structure, the most enigmatic, is what we may call the Lake Yamdrak underground complex. Fishermen and local monks have reported for centuries the existence of structures beneath the waters of this lake. Satellite imagery shows geometric anomalies at the bottom of the lake that do not correspond to natural geological formations, and there are ancient records kept in Tibetan monasteries that entire cities were deliberately submerged as part of some historical event or decision that was erased from conventional records. What emerges from these 9 places is a disturbing pattern. It is not merely ancient lost structures, which would be normal and expected in any ancient region. What is anomalous is the progression. Structures that show advanced technological knowledge, built in impossible or strategic locations, often superimposed on even more ancient structures and deliberately concealed or sealed. It is as if someone, at some point in history, decided that the knowledge behind these constructions needed to be forgotten. Tibet's isolation was not merely a geographic coincidence. It was, perhaps, the perfect way to keep secrets. An impassable mountain, a climate that kills, a population whose oral traditions were protected from the outside world. And within this isolation, structures that defy explanation were erected, modified, and sealed. Generations of Tibetans developed traditions and oral histories about these structures, stories that speak of lost knowledge, of ancient peoples whose name was forgotten, of technology that worked in ways that modern science still cannot explain. Today, Tibet remains closed to systematic archaeological investigation. The structures that still remain accessible are carefully monitored. Historical records are controlled. Scholars who ask inconvenient questions find closed doors. And the 9 structures we examined remain in silence, guarding secrets that perhaps we will never be authorized to know. The question that remains is simple but profound. If Tibet was truly sealed from the rest of the world, who possessed the advanced knowledge to build what was left behind?